So the player that I think would be the perfect wing-back for Ruben Amorim's 3-4-3 system is actually a Manchester City player, Savinho. I mean, it's pretty unlikely that we'd be able to sign him this summer unless City got relegated or something like that. But in terms of the profile of player that I think we should be signing for one of those wing-back positions, Savinho would be my ideal signing. Now, we'd probably have to look for someone who's stylistically similar to Savinho because under any usual circumstances, City aren't going to sell him to us. But if we could find a player who matches what Savinho would provide, then I think that's the sort of player we need to be bringing in, because Savinho can play either on the right or on the left, and he actually kind of reminds me of someone like Douglas Costa. Being a throwback to a traditional winger, someone who is a fantastic 1v1 isolationist, but also has output when he's able to beat his man as well. And don't worry, I'm not just going to analyse a player that realistically we're not going to sign. I am going to come on to some Savinho alternatives that I think United could pursue. But in terms of Savinho, you can see from his FB Ref report exactly what he offers. In the Premier League this season, when compared against every other attacking midfielder and winger, for his ball carrying metrics he ranks in the 96th percentile for his progressive carries, the 98th for his carries into the penalty area, and the 77th for his carries into the final third. And for his take-on metrics, he looks just as impressive, ranking in the 96th percentile for his successful take-ons, as well as the 78th percentile for the percentage of those take-ons he completes. But it's not just that, his end product is fantastic as well. When I say fantastic, it's borderline elite, as he ranks in the 99th percentile, the top 1% for his passes into the penalty area, his expected assists, his XG assisted and his shot creating actions. And so all in all, Savinho at this point in time is bordering on elite in terms of his overall output. And his performance against West Ham over the weekend perfectly exemplified what he offers as a wing-back, getting the assist for the own goal after putting in two fantastic crosses, and then creating the opportunity for Haaland as he just completely rinses Soufal, before putting in an inch-perfect deep cross for Højlund to head into an empty net. Reminiscent of the type of output that you'd expect from a traditional winger, and that's what I think Amorim's system needs, a traditional winger. And I'm going to break down the tactical reasons why having a player like this in Amorim's system would be a complete game changer. But before that, if you want to get access to my in-game Instagram group chat, where we have discussion and analysis throughout all the Manchester United games, and I'm also going to be doing Q&As at the start and at the end of the week, you can check that out. My Patreon will be linked in all the usual places. Your support would be very much appreciated. So from a tactical point of view, the reason why I think having a winger like Savinho, who's a 1v1 specialist, either on the right or on the left, I'd probably prefer him on the left just so he can go down the outside, but he could be equally as effective from the right as well, is because it gives you an outlet when the opposition is looking to compress the centre of the pitch, using a narrow defensive shape in their own half. See, from Ruben Amorim's time at Sporting Lisbon, we know that his side are going to look to break down opposition sides, primarily through playing through the centre, focusing their play on intentionally finding those passes between the lines, specifically looking to use a centre forward, which was Victor Gyökeres at Sporting Lisbon, to drop off, thread a pass into his feet from where he can be the link man, and then you have the two players, the interior forwards either side, who can now look to either receive the ball or make runs off of Gyökeres' deeper movement, looking to now break him behind. But the issue with this, particularly in the Premier League, is that a lot of managers have worked out that the top sides, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, whoever it is, they are looking to break down sides by playing through the centre. And so what a lot of teams are doing now is they're just compacting their midfield, using an incredibly narrow system, whether this is a 4-4-2, a 4-5-1, or a 5-3-2, something like that, whilst also looking to squeeze their backline high up the pitch in order to minimise the space between the lines. And so what this does is it leaves space out wide. Now for a side like United, this is an issue, because the opposition knows if we move the ball out to say Mazraoui or Dalot, because these two don't have the output of wingers in terms of being able to beat a player in 1v1s, being able to play quick passes and burst in behind for a 1-2, or just create via a cross, this limits United's play as the opposition's happy to allow United to move the ball out wide to one of these two players, shuffle across, and then watch as United are forced to go backwards, which leads to a lot of ball circulation but not a lot of ball progression into dangerous chance creating positions. Now in just a minute I am going to suggest a pattern of play which I think Amorim could use in order to get the best out of a 1v1 specialist by isolating them against a fullback. But before we come on to that, because Savinho is pretty much an unlikely transfer, I don't think it's 100% off the cards, especially if City get relegated from the Premier League or something like that, but it is very unlikely. So who would be the alternatives? Well, for a similar price to Savinho, which I think would probably be around 50 to 60 million pounds, you could either go for Nico Williams at Athletic Bilbao or Jamie Bino Gittins at Borussia Dortmund. Now of the two, I actually prefer Jamie Bino-Gittins. I do rate Nico Williams as well, but I do think Williams can be a bit erratic in the final third, and when it comes to end product, I just think Gittins at the moment is a level above, and when I show you both of their FB ref reports, I think you'll understand where I'm coming from. But both players would fit the role of a wing back on either side, either the right or the left, perfectly. They're exceptional carriers of the ball, able to receive the ball in deep positions, before using their acceleration and their pace over long distances to drive the ball up the pitch, and this would work especially well in Amorim's 3-4-3 because as we know he does like his wing backs to drop deep on the flank rather than retaining high positions. And so by having one of Bino-Gittins or Nico Williams dropping deep to receive the ball on the outside of the opposition's defensive shape, now you would have someone unlike Dalot or Mazraoui who can genuinely drive the ball forward at speed, with Bino-Gittins and Nico Williams maybe actually being better than Amad at doing this, but when the ball is in the final third, both of these two players are fantastic 1v1 isolationists. And this is because not only do both players have the trickery and the pace to be able to wrong foot a defender and then drive into the space, but both players can either go down the line on their left foot or cut inside onto their right. But this is where I think I prefer Bino-Gittins to Williams, just because I think when cutting inside onto their right foot, Bino-Gittins has that ability to whip a ball into the far corner, whereas at the moment I do think Nico Williams can be a bit erratic in these situations, often not having the decisiveness that we see from Bino-Gittins when actually getting into these positions, and this is reflected with both of their output. So these are both players' FB ref reports over the past 365 days when compared against every other attacking midfielder and winger in Europe's top 5 leagues. You can see Bino-Gittins ranks incredibly for his progressive carries, carries into the final third and carries into the penalty area, ranking between the low to mid 90th percentiles for all of those metrics, as well as ranking in the 98th percentile for the amount of successful take-ons he's completed, completing around 50% of the take-ons he attempts, which ranks around the 65th percentile. And even though Nico Williams does also look very impressive with these metrics as well, he doesn't rank as highly for his carries into the final third or carries into the penalty area, and crucially if you look at the percentage of take-ons he's actually completing, it is slightly lower. But also when you look at both players' chance creating and goal scoring output, you can see that in the last 365 days anyway, Gittins is a level above Nico Williams. I mean, they're around the same for their XG assisted, but I do think goal scoring wise, both from a statistical point of view as well as from the eye test, I just think Gittins has better end product when he's cutting inside onto his right foot from that left side. And so out of the two, I'd probably prefer Jamie Bino-Gittins. He's also a homegrown player, so that would help us as well. They probably cost around 55 to 60 million pounds. Nico Williams is also on big wages at Athletic Bilbao, so even if Gittins costs 60 million, it probably just about balances out. But of the two, personally, I would prefer Jamie Bino-Gittins, but Nico Williams would be a good option as well, depending on the price and of course his salary. Now a cheaper option could be someone like Mitoma, who's 27, 28 by the start of next season, which may put some people off, but I think he would be slightly cheaper, and I think Brighton maybe would be willing to sell for around 35 to 40 million pounds, considering he only has 2 years left on his contract. And whilst being in their late 20s may put a lot of people off in terms of being a winger, I actually think Mitoma is the type of winger who could play to the age of 32 or 33, and particularly in that left wing back spot. And in terms of having the required attributes in terms of his 1v1 dribbling as well as his end product in the final third, and also being Premier League proven, Mitoma would certainly tick a lot of boxes to play in that left wing back position. But again, the viability of the transfer would depend on price. Someone who could be even cheaper than Mitoma could be Samuel Lino at Atletico Madrid, who like Mitoma has a contract until 2027. He is slightly younger than Mitoma at 25, but he is definitely more of a wing back than a natural winger. However, when you look at his FB ref report, even compared against midfielders, you can see that he's a phenomenal carrier of the ball, as well as very good in 1v1 situations. He's a right footer who can also go down the line, so he would tick a lot of boxes. I'd probably pay around £30 million for Lino, so depending on the price of different players, there could be better options, but for me, I would preferably like Bino-Gittins or Nico Williams. If not, I think Samuel Lino could be a good option, but if Mitoma was available for say £35 million, which I'm not 100% sure he would be, he could be a good option for United, particularly for the next 4, maybe 5 years, because he is a type of player who I could see playing till the age of 32, 33, and of course he is Premier League proven. But let's say United were able to bring in one of these players to play in a left wing back role, or at least a player with similar attributes. How could Ruben Amorim set up the side in order to get the best out of them? Well, in order to get the best out of them, you want to isolate them against the opposition's fullback. And the way of doing this is by working the ball down the opposite side, dragging the opposition's defensive shape over to that side, leaving space on the far side, and then you have this player holding a wider position. And then what you want to try and do is work the ball backwards before then using a quick switch of play, with someone like Bruno Fernandes or Harry Maguire having this ability to get the ball off their feet, switch play quickly, and because you are using one long pass to switch play rather than a series of shorter passes, the opposition's midfielder on that side is going to have less time to be able to get across and create a 2v1. And so you're creating that 1v1 situation, and if you have a player like Bino Gittins, Nico Williams, Mitoma, whoever it is, and they can go either down the outside or down the inside, this is obviously going to create a massive dilemma for the fullback, because even if they try to negate that winger being able to cut inside into a shooting position, they're going to overcompensate and leave space on their outside. Then this is where having a wing back who can either come on the inside or go down the outside comes into play, as they can drive down the outside and look to get into a shooting or more likely a crossing situation. But also further up the pitch, when you are trying to break down the side in the final third, you can look to shift the ball over to the player in this left wing back position, and rather than having players providing over and underlapping runs, as you would probably want to have with someone like Ahmad or Dalot in that position, instead you can instruct players on that side to now make runs away from the ball, dragging the opposition players away from the 1v1 situation, which creates more space around the opposition's fullback, which therefore gives your left winger more space to try to beat his man and get into a crossing or a shooting position. So let me know who your ideal left wing back would be. Would it be a left winger like Bino Gittins, Savinho, or would it be more of a natural wing back like an Alvaro Fernandez, or a fullback like a Nuno Mendes? Let me know in the comments, and you can also sign up to my Patreon. I'll leave it linked in all the usual places.